There is a mental trap that many people fall into without ever realizing it. It doesn't look like a trap from the outside. In fact, most of the time it feels like you are simply thinking about your life, trying to understand your problems, or planning how to improve your future. But slowly and quietly, this pattern of thinking begins to hold you in the exact place where you feel stuck. You might feel like you are constantly analyzing your situation, searching for answers, or waiting for the perfect moment to change something in your life. Yet despite all the thinking, planning, and reflecting, nothing truly moves forward. Days pass, weeks pass, sometimes even years pass, and you begin to notice that your life looks almost the same as it did before. This experience can be deeply frustrating because you know that you want something different. You may want progress, growth, confidence, or a sense of direction. You might watch other people move forward with their lives and wonder why everything seems easier for them. From the outside, it might appear that they are simply more motivated, more disciplined, or more lucky than you are. But the truth is often more complex than that. Many people who feel stuck are not lacking intelligence, ambition, or desire. In fact, they often think more deeply about their lives than most people do. The real problem is not the lack of thinking. The real problem is the type of thinking that slowly becomes a mental trap. When the mind becomes too focused on analyzing every possibility, every risk, and every potential outcome, it can create a loop where action feels increasingly difficult. Instead of moving forward and learning through experience, the mind keeps returning to the same questions again and again. What if this doesn't work? What if I make the wrong decision? What if I fail and everyone notices? What if there is a better option that I haven't discovered yet? These questions may sound responsible and thoughtful at first. After all, thinking carefully about decisions can sometimes protect us from mistakes. But when this thinking becomes excessive, it slowly begins to replace action itself. Instead of taking small steps and adjusting along the way, the mind becomes obsessed with finding certainty before doing anything. And certainty is something that life rarely provides. Because of this, many people unknowingly build a habit of waiting. They wait until they feel more confident. They wait until they have more knowledge. They wait until the situation feels safer or more predictable. But the strange thing about confidence is that it rarely appears before action. Confidence usually grows after we take action and realize that we are capable of handling challenges. When someone remains trapped in this cycle of waiting and analyzing, the brain starts reinforcing the feeling of being stuck. Every day that passes without action strengthens the belief that progress is difficult or impossible. Eventually, the person may begin to doubt themselves in deeper ways. They might start thinking that maybe they are simply not capable of achieving the things they want. But this belief is often not true. What is really happening is that the mind has learned a pattern that prioritizes safety over growth. The brain naturally tries to protect us from situations that might cause embarrassment, failure, or rejection. Thousands of years ago, this instinct helped humans survive dangerous environments. But in modern life, the same instinct can sometimes limit our opportunities. When the brain detects uncertainty, it often responds by encouraging caution. It sends signals that make unfamiliar actions feel uncomfortable or risky. As a result, staying in familiar routines begins to feel safer than exploring new possibilities. Even if those routines are not making us happy, they still feel predictable, and predictability can create the illusion of security. Over time, this pattern can create a strange emotional conflict. On one side, there is a strong desire to change, grow, or improve life. On the other side, there is an equally strong desire to avoid discomfort and uncertainty. The mind moves back and forth between these two forces, thinking constantly but acting rarely. Many people try to solve this problem by thinking even harder. They read self-improvement books, watch motivational videos, or spend hours planning their future. While these activities can be helpful, they can also become part of the same mental trap if they replace action instead of supporting it. Sometimes the person begins to believe that they just need one more piece of information before they start. Maybe they think they need the perfect strategy, the perfect timing, or the perfect mindset. But perfection is another illusion that keeps people stuck. In reality, progress almost always begins with imperfect steps. Think about how children learn to walk. They do not spend weeks analyzing the mechanics of balance before taking their first step. They try, they fall, they adjust, and eventually they learn through experience. If adults approach their goals with the same willingness to experiment, many forms of personal growth would happen much faster. Unfortunately, as people grow older, they often become more afraid of making mistakes. Society sometimes teaches us that failure should be avoided at all costs. This belief can create enormous pressure to make the right choices every time. Instead of viewing mistakes as part of learning, the mind begins to treat them as evidence of personal weakness. When this belief becomes strong enough, the safest option appears to be doing nothing at all. If you never take the risk, you never experience the failure. But at the same time, you also never experience the growth that comes from trying something new. Another powerful part of this mental trap is comparison. In the modern world, it is easier than ever to compare your life to the lives of others. Social media, online success stories, and constant exposure to other people's achievements can create unrealistic expectations about progress. When someone sees others moving quickly toward their goals, it can create the feeling that they are already behind. This perception increases the pressure to make the perfect decision. Instead of experimenting and learning gradually, the person feels that their next step must be the correct one immediately. Ironically, this pressure often slows progress even more. The truth is that most successful people did not find their direction through perfect planning. They discovered it through exploration, mistakes, and unexpected opportunities. Many of the paths that define a person's life were never part of their original plan. Yet the mind trapped in overthinking struggles to accept this uncertainty. It continues searching for a level of clarity that only action can provide. And so the cycle continues. Thinking leads to waiting, waiting leads to doubt. And doubt leads back to more thinking. Breaking this pattern does not require eliminating thinking completely. Thoughtful reflection can still be valuable. The key difference is learning when thinking becomes a substitute for action instead of a preparation for it. At some point, progress requires stepping into the unknown and allowing experience to teach what analysis cannot. Part 2. One of the most surprising things people discover when they finally take action is that many of their fears were exaggerated by the mind. Before starting something new, the brain tends to imagine the worst possible outcomes. It creates detailed scenarios of embarrassment, rejection, or failure. These imagined situations can feel so real that they discourage action before anything has even happened. But reality is often far less dramatic than the mind predicts. When people actually take the first step, they usually realize that the experience is manageable. Even when things do not go perfectly, the consequences are rarely as catastrophic as expected. Instead of confirming their fears, the experience begins to weaken them. This is because the brain updates its beliefs based on real experiences. When you repeatedly face situations that once seemed intimidating, the brain slowly learns that those situations are not as dangerous as it originally assumed. Over time, the discomfort decreases, and confidence begins to grow naturally. Another important realization is that progress rarely happens through a single dramatic decision. More often, it happens through small, consistent actions that accumulate over time. A person who writes one page every day eventually completes a book. Someone who practices a skill for a short time each day gradually becomes highly skilled. These small actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but their long-term effect can be extraordinary. The mental trap of overthinking often prevents people from appreciating the power of gradual improvement. The mind tends to focus on big outcomes instead of small processes. When someone shifts their attention from outcomes to daily actions, the feeling of being stuck begins to fade. Instead of asking whether a goal will succeed or fail, they simply focus on taking the next step. Each action creates a small amount of progress and a small amount of learning. Over time, these small experiences reshape how a person sees themselves. Instead of identifying as someone who is stuck, they begin to see themselves as someone who is capable of movement and growth. This change in identity can be extremely powerful. The most interesting part of this transformation is that it often starts with very simple decisions. Sometimes the turning point is nothing more than choosing to try something today instead of waiting for the perfect moment tomorrow. When people make this shift consistently, the mental trap slowly loses its power. Thinking becomes a tool instead of a prison. Reflection becomes something that supports action rather than replacing it. Eventually, the person realizes that progress was never blocked by a lack of ability or opportunity. It was blocked by a pattern of thinking that made action feel more dangerous than inaction. And once that pattern begins to break, life starts moving again in ways that once seemed impossible.